So you can't really see it right now, but in the move, I left my tripod behind. So I've resorted to a selfie stick and yeah, my phone and a selfie stick, and I have the selfie stick, I'm holding it between my thighs so that way I can just have the camera directly on me for this. But yeah, I feel really dumb right now, but we're good. We're good. And you may feel it wobble back and forth. I'm not sitting in the most stable area. So yeah, cue the intro. So today I am reviewing this book. Yeah. I'm reviewing Psychic Witch by Matt Auryn. This has been long awaited. I joined a book club on, I think it was either Pagans and Witches or the Witches Circle Amino. And I joined in on the discussion of this book. A lot of people had interesting things to say. I've since deleted the app off of my phone because I had to make room on my phone for business reasons, and yeah, so I can't fully share that discussion. I'm only going to share the memory of what I remember discussing with everybody on there. So I read this book, I devoured this book. I had debated getting it for many months because I thought I don't need more books, honestly. If anything, I need digital books, or I need books that I am supposed to be reading right now. Yeah, but I caved and I had a treat yourself moment, and I got this book and I wanted to read it just to see what all the hype was about, because I got on Instagram and everybody was hyping this book up just left and right. I think I saw Thorn Mooney recommend it, and I thought, well, what's the big deal and stuff? Is it another beginner book, or is it, you know, is there something new in here, something grand, or is it the same stuff rehashed? Like, what is it? But people were saying Matt Auryn did an amazing job with this book, and I wanted to see for myself, so I got the book. I devoured it. Yeah, I put aside other reading that I need to be doing that I'm working on now. But yeah, so my copy is tabbed up with everything that I want to go over about this book, that I want to review. I had my own personal biases to get past with this book, I guess you could say, because like I had read, as I understand it, Matt Auryn was taught by Laurie Cabot in the Cabot tradition, among many other traditions, which he lists in here. I had read her book, I think it was the book Power of the Witch, and I had gotten it secondhand from McKay's bookstore before, when I was trying to collect as many metaphysical books as I could. And I read that book and I did not, like, it was okay, but it seemed like it was, there were parts of that book that seemed like they were a little bit, like she would go off on tangents, or it wasn't tangents that weren't relevant to the actual work, and they were very ideological tangents, and I'm going to shut my mouth on the rest of that because it came off as a little, there was parts that came off as negative to me, and I didn't fully understand what she meant by the alpha brainwave state, or whatever she was talking about at the time, because it was so far removed from the other books that I was reading at the time that were on Wicca, and then me venturing into reading the Farrer's books. Laurie Cabot's book just kind of, it stuck out as something seeming a little bit different. And that's not to say it was bad, like there were some really good parts in that book, and the copy that I had was highlighted, but it still didn't sit right with me. And then I've seen a lot too about Christopher Penczak, Like, I've seen that he has a whole class series too, and as I understand it, Matt Auryn learned from him as well. And I've been curious about the Temple series, so I wanted to check out what Matt Auryn had to say, see if there was anything different, anything about the Temple series in here. But so apart from the background, as the book stands on its own, overall it's solid, it's really good. If you're an absolute beginner, I would 100% recommend this book over any of the other mass-produced books nowadays. Yeah, thankfully this one is not ghost-written. This is a lot of stuff that you need within one book, which is amazing, because sometimes there's a lot of stuff in here that gets left out of beginner books. And yeah, I think we can just start going over some of the things that I've tabbed in here that really had me interested. Now there's some stuff that I've tabbed that's kind of like, I want to kind of talk about that, or talk about, like, I guess where I've seen it before, right? Like, it's not anything new, but then there's stuff in here that I've tabbed that's really good or that's less commonly seen. And then there's some really good points in here that I feel like are relatively newer, or if they're explained, it's in older books. They don't get explained as much. And I will give it to Matt Auryn that he is definitely himself in this book, and I don't feel like he goes off on tangents really, which is nice. He stays very focused on the subject matter and the work at hand. Actually, you know what, we're not going to go over the tabs just yet. I got one personal aesthetic beef with this book. Yeah, so what's up with the witchy black and white aesthetic? Like, it's beautiful, but this drives me nuts about both of these books. They're black and they're matte covers, and I'm in Florida. Like, it's so humid here. You get sweaty. You're holding your book, you're walking out of the bookstore, right? You get hot and sweaty, you end up with fingerprints and humidity marks on your matte cover of your book. Like, it's nice to see like these really sleek matte covers and stuff, but they do show damage and scratches over time. Like, that's my aesthetic beef with these books. Is just, I love the matte cover, but it just doesn't work for me. And I almost wish that like this book was in a hardback. I wish I had like a hardback version of this book. I don't know if there is one sold. The book was actually so good, like, I'm gonna keep this book for the long term. Maybe in like 20 or 30 years I'll have students and I would probably want them to read this book. I don't know, maybe I'll be eating those words in 30 years. Yeah, the paper cover, like, this book I would want to last, honestly. I would want this book to last longer, so I'm gonna have to be a little more careful with it, not just throwing it in the bag to read. Yeah, okay, tabs now. Tabbed points. So starting out, I'm not gonna go over Devon Hunter's forward or like the acknowledgements and stuff. I don't, well, actually, yeah, okay. There was something sweet in here in memory of Raven Grimassi. And it kind of, it reminded me, like, it breaks my heart because the last few years when I was really getting involved in coven work and my local community, there were a lot of elders that were dying, and you know, it kind of made me think about all of those people. They're gone now, and the cycle's moving forward. And you know, even it makes me think about people who are older, especially now with, like, say, current world events it makes me think about people that I would love to meet, and I hope I would get the chance to meet one day, at a festival one day. I've never been to a festival. I would love to go to a festival. I would love to go to one of these gatherings, get-togethers. I've never been to any gatherings. I've been with my local community, but there's a lot of people that I haven't gotten to meet that I would like to meet one day. People that I've watched on documentaries and read about, and they're out there, and some people have friended me on Facebook now, and I still haven't gotten to meet you guys. Maybe that'll change one day. Maybe that'll change in the next few years. Circumstances permitting. Yeah, there's a lot of people that people whose work that I've read that I hope I'll get the chance to meet one day. So as far as these tabs go, the first one that I had here was the combining psychic power and witchcraft note. There's kind of, the way it's presented in the book is that there's this idea that things are separate, that being a psychic or being a witch is separate, but I never really viewed them as separate. You know what I mean? Like when I was starting out with my practice, like as a young teenager, I didn't really see them as like, I get what the idea is, that it's different ways that you use the abilities and that you use energy and stuff, but using psychic abilities and divination seemed just as important a part of witchcraft as like the actual witchcraft itself. So I didn't really vibe with that idea of the two being totally separate things. Yeah, I get it, but I don't at the same time, because there's people writing all these blogs about the Claire abilities and how to use your psychic abilities. Like that's not new in the community. It's not, they haven't really been separate things as of late. Maybe in the past they were, not as much nowadays, not for the younger community as much, I don't think. Let's see. So I really like this note about rushing through daily practice or needing the validation of a teacher. That's something that I have personally been encountering lately. I guess you could say like initiation on the surface happens person to person, like those kinds of things. Teaching happens person to person, but there's a point where you're on your own, and your true initiation, I guess, is between you and the gods. And I've been going through that process recently, completely a part of my own studies, and it's two different worlds, and I will always say that it's probably better to have a teacher than to not, and to have somebody there that you can talk to have a good mentor. But you know, your mentor is not God or a perfect guru, right? Really, there's a point where the things that you do, you have to do them on your own. You have to do them between you and the gods, or between you and divine energy, or whatever you want to call it if you're not very subscribed to the religious side of things. And I like that note too about taking personal accountability for your practice. So another good note in this book was, and I quote, "You can't build a magnificent structure on a weak foundation and expect it to stand the test of time." That line sticks with me because there's memes that go around about people going through their teenage Wiccan phase, or they're in the 90s, they went through a teenage Wiccan phase and stuff like that. And it makes me think about my own practice too, when I ended up stagnating, and then I was like, I need to find a teacher. Like, I started thinking in the mind of like, okay, it's time for me to start seeking. Because there's so much 101 material and foundational material out there, but I don't think, and I didn't fully understand at the time, that some of the people writing that material were coming from different traditions. So somebody might say, oh, you start your circle casting in the north. Somebody else might say, oh, you start it in the east. Those two systems don't mix together well, and they might have entirely different reasons that are traditionally based for why they do that. So the idea of like, you can't build something long lasting without a solid foundation is so true. And I also learned this in martial arts. It's the idea of your first teacher or your first sensei is God to you, which is not entirely true, but you treat it that way. You learn everything that they have to say in full as one cohesive system. But then you move on from that, you graduate from that, you have other teachers, and slowly you incorporate what other teachers teach that goes well with what you've learned already. Because if you're learning from too many teachers at once from totally different systems, you're going to come into stuff that doesn't blend together. And if you don't have a solid foundation, you're going to end up getting mixed up. And I had that happen to me at one point, and then I started really looking into who was teaching what traditions, and figuring out like what direction I wanted to take my own personal path in. But eventually when you learn from so many teachers and you have your solid foundation down, and then you have the ideas of others, you eventually start to synthesize your own ideas, and that becomes your personal way. And then your personal way, your solid foundation, you pass on to your students. Right, so the next thing was in the first chapter. The first chapter is called The Power in the Sight. I was so glad, and this ties back into the Laurie Cabot thing, that Matt Auryn covered brainwave states, and he broke it down, gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta, because you see those YouTube videos going around too, and it's like, meditate for delta brainwave music and all that, and you're like, what is this new age crap? He really broke it down in a way that was easy to understand, and I like that the way that Matt Auryn has taught all of this, he encompasses a lot of beginner basics that were taught, but he finds a way in this book to really bring together these different systems in a cohesive way. So like, I have a better understanding of the idea of the brainwave states than I did before, and now I understand what Laurie Cabot was talking about in her older books. Yeah, and this was the other thing too, is like getting into the alpha brainwave state, that it's actually a lower number than our regular waking brainwave state, our beta brainwave state. And I saw on social media, I'm pretty sure it was him, Matt Auryn, went and he commented on, or he tweeted or something, and it was like, why are people talking about raising, what does raising your vibration mean? Like, it doesn't make sense in light of what we know about brainwave states, because to get in that meditative or that trance brainwave state, you're actually like lowering the vibration. And I thought that was really smart, because that's just marketing lingo. Raise your vibrations. It's all the new age marketing that lets people profit off of things. It sounds magical. It sounds like you're elevating yourself, you're going higher, but it's not. It doesn't make sense. Another good note here, I love the childlike wonder, and the whole like the psychic immersion and everything. When he talks about getting back into a childlike state, that was so helpful. Like, those exercises seem like so much fun. I don't know, maybe you should just get the book alone for that and just try out that exercise and tell me what results you get. I'd love to see people do that, and go back into like a childlike state. Oh, okay, so this one, this is my next note, and it's on pages 38 and 39. He has a grounding exercise, and this is literally everywhere. Okay, this grounding exercise, it's the tree exercise. It's taught to everybody by everybody. It's all around. You're gonna see this in like every freaking book, but it's where you go into the meditative state, and then you imagine that you're a tree, or that you have roots and they're extending down into the ground, and you can draw up energy. You can and it works. There's a reason it's in like every book, and it's because it's one of the best exercises and one of the most basic and easiest to get. And grounding is absolutely essential when you're in circle, or when, you know, things start to get too much. You got to know how to move that energy down. But it's just like, this exercise, it needs to be in this book. It's there, but I see it again and I'm like, oh yeah, it's the tree exercise. Like Starhawk wrote about that in her book, The Spiral Dance. That's probably one of the most common places you'll see it mentioned. One of my teachers, he has a video on how to do the grounding and stuff, the tree. Yeah, it's pretty much everywhere. That doesn't mean it's bad, but it's just, I see it again and I'm like, oh yeah, the tree. I'm already very familiar with that. Okay, yeah, so also centering, entering alpha was nice to see explained, because again, going back to the Laurie Cabot books, I had no clue what she was talking about. So it's nice to see that kind of reintroduced to the mainstream. Psychic prompts to enter that alpha brainwave state, closing down. Like these are all good things. These are all really good exercises for how to enter and exit meditative or trance states. Okay, so this was one of the things when I first read the table of contents I was really excited about. It's chapter 6, The Triple Souls of the Witch. I was super duper excited about this chapter. I thought it was going to be something new that I hadn't seen before. Not that this is a bad thing, but it ended up not being. Like, it ended up being the lower, the middle, and the upper self. And the whole thing where he explains it as a tree. I'm just gonna, yeah. So this, I was already reading, and I've been working through, just on my own time, because I can, Keeping Her Keys. And again, I want to mention this. So Cindy Brannon describes the lower, the middle, and the higher self in her book, Keeping Her Keys. And the way that she described it was like as a tree, basically. And so, you know, I'm going through my my little notebook, I'm taking notes, and I drew, where is it? Yeah, so I drew this diagram, which is basically with the explanations and stuff, because I was taking notes, and I drew the tree with the trunk and the leaves and stuff for the lower, the middle, and the higher self. And then I get this book and I open it up and I see the same diagram over again. Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing, but again, it's a concept. I thought the Triple Souls was going to be something new. Having it explained as like cauldrons and stuff is new. I thought that was a really beautiful example. Very nice diagram. But the whole idea of the lower, middle, and upper selves is, again, that's another common topic. If you don't know what those are, again, you should probably get this book and read through it, because everything is explained very cohesively. Let's see. So I like this section a lot, and I like the explanation of the shadow self, and Jungian psychology. Jungian psychology, as I understand it, is outdated nowadays, but when I was studying film and we were talking about the art of storytelling and the art of myth and the hero's journey story structure, we also talked about archetypes that were derived from the work of Carl Jung. And the shadow is actually, I don't know, the best modern example of a shadow character in a story that I can think of is like Kylo Ren, because he's supposed to be, wow, what's her name? Rey. He's supposed to be Rey's shadow. Like, he embodies what she doesn't want to be, but she herself is also exhibiting those same characteristics, but she's externalizing them onto his character. And so are we as the audience. Like, when you, I'm not going to spoil the movies, but when you understand the story later and you understand how she works with the Force, I guess, it's different than the... Okay, so there was a little bit of a camera issue, and then it started raining, of course, so I wasn't able to finish filming yesterday, so I'm gonna finish today. Yeah, so the point I was talking about before my camera cut off was I was on the tab on the shadow self section on page 104, and I was saying that I think this was one of the better notes in this book, is the inclusion of a section about the shadow self more in depth. But I was also talking about yesterday how the shadow comes from Jungian psychology, and it's not, Jungian psychology is no longer accepted in the field as far as I'm aware. But when I studied film, we actually discussed the shadow archetype a lot, because the shadow is a big part of the storytelling in the hero's journey. And a big, a modern example of a shadow character would be Kylo Ren from, what is it, the new Star Wars movies. That's right, Kylo Ren is a really good example of a shadow character, because he's Rey's shadow. He embodies the characteristics that she wants to deny about herself. And when you learn his reasoning and his story and stuff, despite all the weirdness about it and the weird romance, I won't spoil too much, but you know, it makes sense. And you know, the shadow is not as bad as you think it is, and it's a part that you carry within yourself. And I think it's cool that they Matt Auryn includes this section on here. Shadow work has also kind of been like a really hot topic online. Like, I always see it's like this big, people are having this big revelation about shadow work all the time, it seems like. And it's honestly, like I said yesterday about a lot of parts in this book, it's nothing new. Like, it's been around, it's just, are people ready to engage in it? So here's another really, really good note. I love this section. I thought this was smart to include too, witchcraft as a priesthood. Matt Auryn made it really clear in this book that he's separating witchcraft from religion, but as anybody who's followed or studied about the whole neo-paganism movement and stuff, that hasn't been the case for a lot of people. They haven't been separate, and they've been communicated in older books as one and the same, is that witchcraft is a priesthood, from that perspective of it. For other people it's not, and that's okay. And I do like that Matt Auryn actually that he's separated the two, and he's made this book very accessible for people from all different walks. But yeah, as a priesthood, it's good that he explains this. I like the idea of lifting souls up instead of holding sway and dominance over them. That's so true. And his explanation of the commitment of service that's very important for me to see in this book, especially somebody following more along the lines of British traditional witchcraft. It's nice to see that communicated, especially in a book that newer practitioners are going to read. See, and this was another important note for me on page 122 when Matt Auryn goes over how Christopher Penczak explained the difference between a high priest or a high priestess and just a priest or a priestess or just a practitioner. Again, that difference I think is pretty crucial. I've heard it explained before as like being a high priest is a title that you earn, that's that you hold as a result of your commitment to service to others, right? You're not a high priest without other people, right? Because you're supporting other people, and that's so crucial. Okay, so this note was an interesting one to me. I simultaneously love this and I don't love that this was included. So when I think about the target demographic for this book, I think about people my age and younger. And I'm talking Gen Z, born in 1997 and beyond that. Not anybody born earlier than that. I know that that's not necessarily the case. Like, this book is for everybody, but when I think about the people who are going to pick up and read this book being new practitioners, I think that they're likely going to be younger than me, or a lot of teenagers, or, you know, if teenagers are picking up this book, they're not going to know what you're talking about with Legends of the Hidden Temple. I'm just barely old enough to remember that, and I was lucky that we had the Nickelodeon Gas channel back in the day on my Bright House cable. Yeah. I vaguely remember the Shrine of the Silver Monkey. I vaguely do, but I'm going to tell you right now, Matt Auryn, anybody younger than me is probably not going to remember this or understand this reference. And the Power Rangers one, Power Rangers is popular, so is Voltron. Like, there was a recent Voltron show out, but even then, like, those specific references are, I feel like those might fly over people's heads. Yeah, but I get what I'm picking up what you're putting down here, and it's nice that it's included for the people who will understand it and remember. I'm sorry I'm laughing, but this is almost like this is one of those things when you include it. It's like when I watched the music video for Fergalicious recently, and they pulled out this phone in the middle of it, and it was like the one that appeared in Zoe 101. Wow, people younger than me aren't gonna know what I'm talking about. This is like the one that appeared in Zoe 101, where it's like the two layers and like one slide, like a keyboard pops out, and I'm like, that phone's like an ancient brick now. That's kind of what I feel like when something like this gets included, when a specific timely reference gets included, it shows the time period that the author is from. It dates the book to this time period, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but as far as the comparison goes, yeah, this is one of the very few references in here, and they're from a very specific time period. Not a bad thing, but it does pin the book to this date. I would argue that this book could have been timeless. I would argue that this book is probably going to be one of those 95% timeless books, but we're going to go back and we're going to see the Legends of the Hidden Temple reference in there, and that's going to be just that one little speck that dates it to this time period. And I love that. I love it. But what I'm getting is just that the target, like, if the younger demographic isn't going to pick that up, or if they are, it's probably thanks to YouTube and reruns. I'm just being real about it, but it's cute. I love that Matt Auryn is himself in this book, and I really appreciate that. I've compared energy work to Dragon Ball Z before, like, I've been there, done that. I totally get it. I love it. Yeah, another cool inclusion was the witch fire. I liked that section because, so sometimes I look at like grimoires, like, and even like I've read like some LHP grimoires before, and I've seen this term tossed around, the witch fire and stuff, but I haven't seen it broken down and explained. So it's nice to see witch fire explained. Like I conceptually get it, but yeah, that was a good note to see that explained here. Really good note, and we talked about this in the Amino book club group chat, is divine love felt as agape. Younger people may not know what agape is, but specifically said here, and I quote, agape is unconditional love for all humanity that is seen as a divine quality. That is beautiful. That was one of my super good notes in here, that was included. And when I was actually taking a humanities course at university, we talked, the whole course was on the meaning of life, right? What is the reason for life? What is the meaning for life? What is the universal motivation? And I think our conclusion was happiness, but one of the things that we covered in there was love. And there's a book, and I think it might be D'Souza that wrote it. I think it was Ronald D'Souza, and the book was called like Love, A Very Short Introduction. And in that book, the 4 different types of love as explored by the ancient Greeks, one of them was eros, one of them was agape. I forget what the other 2 were. There was like a familial love, something else, but agape was one of them that we explored that topic specifically in the humanities course. I like seeing that included here, and I like it being related to the witch fire and the priesthood of witchcraft. Like I really think that that's a grade A note to have in here. That's not something that's mentioned in a lot of other books that I've read. So A+ for that. And then I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna flip back and forth a lot as I've been doing. This was a pet peeve of mine. That diagram of the circle casting and the spiraling energy and stuff, these diagrams on pages 142 and 143, they're not bad. They're actually decent, and I understand that there's only so much page size, and a diagram is just a symbolic representation, but I still feel, based on my personal experience, like the one in the middle there where the equator is should be at the foot level, at the surface of the earth and stuff, and that the circle, the sphere itself should be a lot larger, because ideally when you have a lot of people in a circle, or even when it's just yourself, like, I'm sorry, this guy looks just claustrophobic to me, but I wouldn't, like, if I was a new practitioner, I was seeing that, I would think, okay, this circle is about yay big and stuff, like, right, coming above my head and stuff, when really, no, it's not. It's a lot bigger. Yeah, it's pretty much as big as you make it, but if you're limiting your thought to it being smaller, you're gonna be pretty claustrophobic. And I've had to do circle in very claustrophobic environments, in dormitories, teeny tiny space like this, and I remember, just like this guy, it was not, it was okay, but the best circles that I was in were the bigger ones with like over 30 people. Like, I love that. When your circle is at least the traditional 9-foot distance, like I think that that's pretty darn comfortable and nice. Yeah, so again, that would be like, that would be an important note that I would want, if somebody younger than me was reading this book, or if I was reading this book when I was younger, I would want to tell them like this is, like, side note, not actual size. I'm just being silly. But I think that these diagrams are actually pretty good for what they are and for the amount of page space there is. Like, you only have so many pages in a book, really, when you're making it, so I get it, and it is a good representation, but there are different sizes of circles, and it is not claustrophobic by any means. Oh yeah, and so good thing, the spiraling energy and stuff, covering that. One of the books that I recommended to the people in the Amino group chat was Timothy Roderick's Dark Moon Mysteries, because in that book he explores the idea a little, he touches on it, about what would happen with a counterclockwise circle casting, and I think that was just so amazing. That is 100% a book worth checking out, and just seeing the energy going clockwise or counterclockwise here. I feel like it's just that idea of counterclockwise energy and going the way of the sun or against the sun, that's not really explored in this book, because of the content that this book is rather focused on, is more beginner level. But I would think that the Widdershins casting is definitely different. Dark Moon Mysteries, Timothy Roderick, and love A Very Short Introduction, I think by Ronald D'Souza, if I remember right. I probably have that book somewhere in my storage. Let's see, where are my next notes? Oh yeah, super duper good note. Thank you for including this, because like even in the Farrer's book, The Witch's Bible, or I think it was What Witches Do or something like that, like the two books that were combined into one omnibus basically, they didn't include all of these, and it's nice to see somebody actually include all of these. I've also seen people do for the different elements do it's like spirals. I've seen people do spirals, people do different people do different motions, but it's nice to see this included, because this is, I can't say across the board it's universal, because it's not, but one of the common ones, yes. And spirals, clockwise, counterclockwise for summoning and banishing. Like, I've seen different stuff. It just depends. But it's nice to see the different pentagrams included. Let's see. Oh, another really A+ note in here. Scrying with nature. I love that, because you could literally scry with anything, and I like that he explores that and stuff, because when I was younger I thought it was and when I was starting out I thought it was only like the crystal ball, or like, I guess like I only thought it was like crystals, or that you would look into a bowl of water or something else. And I love the idea of like scrying into nature, into something different. Like, I could probably even look at like the pool, or you know, look at the grass and scry into it if I really wanted to. Scrying is not, I'm not the best at that. That's not my preferred method, but like when it happens, and it's there. So I like that that's included. I don't think a lot of people, I don't know if I've seen a lot of people mention that you can like literally scry into anything. There's another good note on page 171, A++ for including this. I like that the gender aspects are mentioned in here, and that it's explained that there's been a change in that. But I like that it's explained like what people are getting at when they talk about masculine energy and feminine energy too, because like even though they're like Matt Auryn mentions like a changeover to descriptor terms of like hot and cold or passive and aggressive and etc., like different dualistic terms. I like that he still includes, like, he still communicates what which ones are related to the masculine, which ones are related to the feminine, because there are traditions still that use masculine and feminine as descriptors, and it's not, those terms haven't been fully retired in some circles, so it's nice to see that, but that they don't mean literal, they're not as literal as people think, they're archetypal, or hot or cold or yin or yang or whatever else. And this final good note that I had for, again, pages 170 and 171, planetary correspondences and the doctrine of signatures. The doctrine of signatures is not something that I see explored in beginner books. I think that is super duper interesting. Like even in Scott Cunningham's books, I don't remember seeing the term doctrine of signatures mentioned. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just having a memory lapse or something, but I don't remember it seeing explained how people identified like which correspondences different plants had. And I've even used that myself, exploring myself with correspondences for local plants. Like in Florida, we have the native moringa. That plant is so great. That's going to be one of those next up and coming like superfood plants, I think. And I know it's already being sold in like health stores as like a powder and stuff. My university before had moringa trees, and they were free game pretty much, and they grew like wildfire, which they had a fire correspondence, and I explored that with actually like touching the plant and exploring the plant like out in nature, eating it, and you know, really getting in tune with its energy. And that's on my website. I actually wrote an article about that in like the Cunningham type of format and stuff with the correspondences of moringa, because I think that's an important Florida herb. And I was surprised how much of the community, like there's a lot of people in the community in Florida, so I hope that would benefit them and that they would know that that's a native plant. Like you can grow it in your yard, and it's a great tree, it's hardy, it's suitable to this environment, and it tastes great on a salad. And it is wonderful for the craft. And that's available to us. That's just available to us here. I mean, you think about other stuff, you have to ship it all the way over, and you have to ship it from other countries, but it's like, why not use what we have in our backyards? Sorry, I got an itch. Yeah, so using the doctrine of signatures and actually experiencing, understanding like the planetary associations of plants using the doctrine of signatures, I think is important. I love that it's touched on here, and I love that other works are referenced. See, and this was another thing about this book that I really like. Like, he mentions in here, in the 1st century Common Era, Dioscorides, I might be butchering that pronunciation, wrote De Materia Medica using this concept and applying it to plants. Like, I love that Matt Auryn references other works, because nothing drove me crazier when I was having to read a lot of different books. When I would read beginner books, like I'll recommend The Witch's Bible, like, all the time. Like, I will recommend that book because in it the Farrers reference so many other books, they reference so many other material. Like, they're not just drawing from themselves. But then, like, no shade to him, and may he rest in peace, but Raymond Buckland, when I had to read the Big Blue Book, I had never read it before. I was already past the point where I wanted to be reading beginner books and stuff, so I was kind of like, I've already read a lot of this before. But in it, I think the only other books that he references are ones that he wrote, and I don't like that. it's good when you reference other material other than your own, and you give people something further back to look at, or you know, there's a basis for the material that you're writing in your book. I think that's important, and that leads to further research too. Okay, and this was like my final kind of, not negative, but just kind of like kind of note. So I swear an almost identical graphic image. I swear that figure 19, the multi-dimensional levels of reality, I swear that is in Spells and How They Work by Janet and Stuart Farrer. I swear that, or and with the shading too, with the same type of like the gradient traveling up to the divine. Like, I swear very similar is in there, except for instead of like physical, etheric, astral, emotional, there's like lower astral, upper astral, and then like lower mental and upper mental or something like that. Like the layers. Camera cut off again. Yeah, I was saying the names are slightly different, but that diagram is in, or a very similar one is in Spells and How They Work by Janet and Stuart Farrer. I swear, I remember seeing that because I took a picture of it so I could transcribe it into my own personal book, into my own personal notes. So yeah, and then at the end, of course, in this book, there is a wonderful, yeah, psychic spells and magic tricks. Like, there's all different kinds of material in here, things that you can try at home. Yeah, this book, I would give it a solid, I don't know, an arbitrary rating. Let's say 5 dancing monkeys out of 6. No. 9 socks out of 10. Very, very nice for what it is, minus some small pet peeves. And then, I mean, the book itself is beautiful, wonderful. Wish it was hardback. I'm not gonna sock off for just pet peeves, but really, I think this book is gonna last a long time. Just like, what's the book? I think it's Traditional Wicca by Thorne Mooney. I think those books, some of the modern books coming out like these, they're gonna last a long time into the future. They're gonna be go-tos. So, great job, Matt Auryn. This was a fun one to read, and I hope to see more one day.